Let's talk about what makes for a great brand name. The first thing that you care about is that the name evoke the thing it is you're naming. Let me give you an example. This is the Bug Assault. It's a weapon that's used to replace a conventional fly swatter. It uses salt as the ammunition. The Bug Assault is used to assault bugs. That name evokes the thing that it is the object does. Now let me give you a counterexample. This is one of the most venerable brands in the United States. It's the coffee brand Chock Full O' Nuts. What does this evoke? This evokes something other than coffee. In fact, the problem with the brand Chock Full O' Nuts, even though it's an established brand, is that people think that there are nuts in the coffee. And that leads to things like having to put big signs on the lid that say, no nuts, 100% pure coffee. So while Chock Full of Nuts, because of its heritage, is actually a quite valuable brand, I would argue it's not a very good example of a brand that evokes the thing it is that you're trying to name. The second thing that you care about in a brand name is that any associations that arise when you hear the name are positive. Let's imagine that you're looking for a sleep medication. One of the best sleep medications, and I actually have to look at a name card to be able to say this, is Azobiclone. How do you feel about taking Azobiclone as your sleep medication? That's the generic name. The trade name is Lunesta. Now, Lunesta evokes siesta, lunar, all very nice positive associations when thinking about a sleep medication. A third important attribute is that your name is easy to say. A name like Lunesta or a name like Amazon is easy to say. Let me give you some counterexamples. There's a very high quality manufacturer of heating supplies that used to be called Wurbzo. And I think their name was so hard to say that eventually they changed their name to Uponor, which is almost as hard to say. In general, you want to pick names that are easy to say, like Amazon and Lunesta. The fourth thing you'd like in a name is that it's easy to remember. Often a name will be mentioned in conversation, and then later someone will go to the internet and try to recall what it is they heard. There's no real direct formula for making something easy to remember, although you can test for it. But all else equal, dictionary words are easier to remember than made-up words. So for instance, BlackBerry is easier to remember than Accenture, even though BlackBerry is a little longer than Accenture. The other thing that makes names slightly easier to recall or remember is shorter length. So for instance, HP is easier to remember than KPMG. KPMG is an accounting firm with an arbitrary four-letter acronym versus HP, which is a technology products company with another arbitrary acronym, but in this case, only 2 letters. You'd also like your name to be unambiguously spellable. The reason that's important is that increasingly people will hear a name and then they'll go to the internet to learn about the product. I bet a few of you will go to the internet to learn about Bug Assault. If you type BUGASSAULT.com, you won't find Bug Assault. You have to type BUGASALT.com, Bug Assault. That's actually a problem for this brand. Now, one of the ways that you can work around that is to identify or to register the domain names of the spelling variants. So in fact, for my company Zootr, which is spelled Xootr, we also registered, for instance, Zooter, which is a spelling variant that people would naturally think of. The last attribute that you care about in a good brand name is that you have a legal and practical right to use the name. And that means that you have to avoid infringing on other people's trademarks. You can't call your product Coca-Cola because that would be a trademark infringement. But equally important is that you actually are able to register a domain name on the internet that will allow you to tie your artifact or your service or whatever it is that you're designing to the internet. And that the domains that are important or that are best will vary by country. In the US, the best domain is .com. The best top-level domain is .com. In the UK, it might be .co. In Brazil, it might be .br. It will depend on what country you're in. But you want to make sure that in the particular region of the world where you're trying to get the word out about your product or your service or your artifact more generally, that you have the right to use that domain name. And that doesn't mean, for instance, that if your name is Buggasalt, that you register BUG-A-SALT in order to get a unique domain name. You really want the obvious spelling of your brand name to be available as your domain name.